Production support for In Focus provided by Easel. Your favorite images on canvas, more beautiful and affordable than ever before. Easel.com.
Welcome to In Focus with Eden.
For the third consecutive year, a national Broadway tour is launching here in Denver. This year, it's Pippin. We'll meet the director and some of the cast, but we begin with the composer and lyricist, Stephen Schwartz.
Or apparently paper.
Or apparently paper, that's right. Thank you for coming in here early today on your very quick visit for the national tour launch of Pippin at the Denver Center. I really appreciate it.
Well, I like being in Denver anyway, so it was a good excuse to come.
Well, because we have this chance to talk to you, and so many young people who aspire to join the theater do watch this program, we can't miss the opportunity to talk to you about the musical that inspired you to become a composer. It ultimately was called Shinbone Alley,
I love that you remember this name, Shinbone Alley, yes. Not a very well-known show, but
by a friend of your family.
That's right. The composer was a friend of the family, and it was actually a show that featured a lot of dancing cats, and there was a lot of...
Before cats.
Before, that's the point. There was a lot of criticism. You know, reviewers said, well, who would want to go and see a bunch of people dressed up as cats dancing? So just shows how important timing is. Years later, I guess people decided they did want to see dancing cats. Yeah.
So what was it about that experience, your first time seeing someone that you knew from playing the piano in his own house?
Well, I don't think it was really that so much, because of course the composer's name was George Kleinsinger, and obviously he was not in the show, though I did know some of the songs from having heard them when George would play them. But I think what happened to me is what happens to many people who fall in love with musical theater the first time they see it. You know, it's just a world that you want to live in. If you feel that way, then I think you feel that way right away, whether your first show is Shinbone Alley or Pippin or Wicked or, you know, anything else.
He was also instrumental in guiding your parents to get you into real formal musical training. Is that true?
Absolutely. Well, because when we would go over to his house, my parents and I, and he would play a song that he was working on, and I was, I think, about 6 years old, 6 or 7 years old. And then I am told, of course I have no memory of it, that I would then go over to the piano when they were done, and I would pick out the tune that he had just played. And so I think, you know, about the second time I did this, George said to my parents, I think Stephen has some talent and you might want to consider getting him piano lessons. And I'd always been a musical kid anyway, so this didn't come as a shock to them.
But bravo for them for recognizing that and taking those steps when they weren't a musical family to begin with.
Completely. You know, my parents were not remotely in the theater. My dad was a businessman. My mother was a teacher. You know, I mean, they're still around, but they're retired. Obviously. And but they were so supportive, and they never said to me, you know, find a real career or have something to fall back on. And even when I had doubts, you know, my dad would say, well, this is what you're really passionate about, so try it, and if it doesn't work, then you'll find something else, which is kind of exactly what you want from parents, but I think doesn't always happen.
That's really beautiful that they did that, because we wouldn't have had so many wonderful pieces had they not been that supportive.
Well, I probably would have done it anyway, but it wouldn't have been as easy.
And your whole tone might have been quite a bit different.
Maybe, yeah.
Now, the piece that you're here for, the national tour launch of Pippin, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't this begin like in its earliest seeds as part of an after-school project in college, like a club?
That is exactly right.
Scotch and Soda
Scotch
Club.
and Soda, yes. Well, you've obviously done your research. I went to Carnegie Mellon. I was actually a drama major there. And there was an extracurricular organization called Scotch and Soda. In fact, I think it still exists. But it put on an original musical every year. And the drama students weren't allowed to be in it because they wanted to give other kids a chance. But we were allowed to do everything else, write it, direct it, design it, etc. So I signed up my first year, and I started co-writing the show. And my third year there, I did a show with a friend of mine named Ron Strauss called Pippin, which was sort of a historical melodrama, kind of a musical Line in Winter kind of thing.
Yes.
And yeah, that was the early seed of it, although of course the final show has
nothing to do with that. But that's what really got you started. Yeah. When you went to New York and you were trying to make your name as a composer and in the theater, even before Godspell, if I'm correct, you tried to get people interested in doing this project,
That's
including
exactly right.
David Merrick, which would have made it a very different kind of piece.
Yes,
But,
and David Merrick actually liked it and almost optioned it. So
almost.
Fortunately, he didn't.
It would have been very different.
Yes. Yeah.
And we might not have heard your name for quite a long time after that.
Maybe. I might have still be like sitting in a corner trembling.
Harold Prince gave you what I thought was brilliant advice. So share that little anecdote with us.
Now he sort of denies this, but it's true, and I've often credited him with it, and I think he likes being credited with sort of the guidance that made Pippin what it is. When we brought it to Hal Prince to direct, and it was still sort of this melodrama, closer to what it had been at school, and he turned the show down, but he said, you know, I'm really interested in what happens to Pippin after the story you're telling, and I would suggest you take the entire show you have now and make it the first act, and then continue the story afterwards. And we thought, Roger Herson, the book writer, and I thought, well, he's Hal Prince, and actually that's a kind of interesting idea. Yeah. All right, we'll do this. So years and years later, I was on a panel with Joseph Stein, who wrote Fiddler on the Roof and had worked with Hal a lot. And I told the story, and Joe said, but everyone in the theater knows that when Hal isn't going to do a show, that's what he says to everyone.
Because he doesn't want to be discouraging.
Right, so, and you're the only people who ever did it. But you know what, we did it, and you come see the show, and by God, the end of the first act is, you know, where the whole show kind of used to end, more or less. Yeah. And then we have this whole second act, and obviously it's a very different show. But I've always thanked Hal for helping guide us to that.
And that's brilliant. Someone who was already established was being encouraging of a young artist, the same way you often are.
Yes, absolutely. Hal was extremely encouraging, and other people were, you know, very positive and kind to me along the way.
When I was a student, some of the cast albums that were in regular rotation on my turntable were Godspell, but really Pippin.
Oh,
it
great.
really spoke to me in a very specific way, so much so that I would play it from beginning to end on both sides without moving the needle for fear of scratching it.
Wow. And now we don't have to worry about that.
Now we don't have to worry about that. But the sound of that recording was different than the performances, but it was so perfectly captured of its era. So tell me about creating that sound that you did for the cast album and how that relates to the sound we'll hear in this production.
Well, I think it's, you know, people who know the cast album will recognize differences and updates, if you will, but nobody will feel, oh, wait a minute, that's a whole different thing. Before I started getting a chance to write musical theater, I had a very brief career as
at
RCA Records, being a producer, and basically what I would do is if there was an act that they were interested in perhaps signing, because in those days, of course, there were no home studios the way we have now.
They couldn't just use their Apple.
Yeah, couldn't just, you know, do GarageBand and produce a record. So you had to actually go into a studio, and that was my job, to bring artists into the studio and produce a demo, and then if RCA was going to sign them, then, you know, somebody else would take them and do records with them. But consequently, I learned a lot about the recording studio, and when I started doing my own shows and doing cast albums, I just thought, well, I'll do the recordings, and so I had a sort of pop way of doing it. You know, which had to do, not to get too technical, but with tracking the musicians first, and then bringing in the vocalists and doing them separately, and
reducing the brass,
backup, and making it more pop and more streamlined,
radio friendly.
Exactly. And you know, you don't need all those instruments playing on a recording where you need the power in the theater.
And the singers that are working on Broadway and on tours now are very different than the singers that worked on Broadway at that time.
Definitely. Well, first of all, ensemble members, the days of being a dancer and not being able to sing, that's over. our dancers sing very, very well. We even have a couple of acrobats who sing, though I think some of the acrobats sing along. But we actually have a couple of good singers, who are doing these amazing acrobatic feats as well. But yeah, when I first started out, it was very different. And since Pippin was a dance show,
you'd even see in calls dancers who can sing, and singers who can move well.
Exactly, singers who move, dancers who sing, and then there were just dancers. And Bob Fosse, who directed and choreographed the original show, was focused much more on the choreographic part of it. So we did not have the strongest singing cast ever. And actually for the album, truth be told, I did supplement a little bit.
To get that sound.
I got a couple of studio singers
for the permanent record
exactly right.
of the show. We were talking to Diane, and she had a wonderful little anecdote about the songs from this show out of context. She sang one of the songs at her brother's wedding, not realizing that it really meant I can go with you and you and you, thinking it was a love song.
If you don't see it staged, then you don't know that. And actually, I have to say, that's something Bob Fosse created, and then we all embraced
and
that idea.
That's a testament to the music that you write, not just Pippin, but there are so many songs that can stand as a piece of music, as a beautiful song on their own, out of context.
Well, Diane, because she had always been a fan of the music, kind of like you, I guess she listened to it when she was in college or whatever. She was very, very protective of it, and I'm one of these people who, if we're doing a new show, I'll be like, oh, change this, and let's cut that, and let's rewrite this, and some things Diane would go with, and some things she suggested, but in some cases she just put her foot down and said, no, this is what I want to hear, this is what the audience is going to want to hear, and you just have to stick with it.
There's evidence that you're not that precious, that you won't adapt things, because you even put lyrics to the Manson Trio for
Ben Vereen.
Ben Vereen's recording.
Yeah, that was fun. But he was doing, that tune sort of became famous, and he became famous for dancing it because of a television commercial, frankly. The commercial for Pippin had a minute of this dance section from Glory, which we refer to as the Manson Trio, because I think one cast member sometime called it that, though it has obviously nothing whatsoever to do with that. And then when Ben had a recording contract, they asked him to sing that, and of course it had no words. So I wrote a song for him called The Good Time Ladies Rag, which has words to it.
And it's hard to find, but seek it out, because it's delicious.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, Ben, of course, would always do a good job.
You have so much work that we'd love to talk about, but time prohibits us talking about your opera, talking about the work that you're doing to try to adapt Hunchback of Notre Dame for the stage.
Any second. We start rehearsals in 2 weeks for that.
Well, I'm sad that our time was so short today, but I really appreciate you taking the time on this busy schedule to tell me a little bit about the work you've been doing, how it came about.
We love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, great to talk to you.
Next, we'll visit the Tony Award-winning director of this production of Pippin, Diane Paulus.
Like that. How exciting that you've chosen to launch the national tour of Pippin here in Denver, Colorado. What a great treat for us. Thank you for doing that. And
what a great treat for us. I've never been to Colorado. I like it here.
Well, we have a really strong theater community here. You could,
clearly,
if you have time off at ART, you could always come and bless us here with more of your work. I was watching your TEDx Broadway talk, and you were talking about, some of that thesis was about having a chance to impact the audience with something that they can take away with them. So it's more than just the experience of sitting there in the dark and fighting to get out of the garage later.
Right, right.
What about this creation, this delicious salute and brand new thing, Pippin? What about this serves that idea for you?
I believe so passionately in the theater being an opportunity for all of us to be present, to really be alive in the moment. That's why we come, we sit, and in the presence of theater, we connect to ourselves, to our lives, to our emotions. We feel our heartbeat. We feel our emotions turning inside of us, and it's all because of the transmission from the performer and the subject matter of the show. So I'm always looking for shows that do that and push that. And Pippin, aside from the score, which we've all grown up with and loved, or at least I have, and you know, that Fosse, iconic Fosse physicality that is undeniably visceral. For me, it was the story of the show and the questions the show asked about what is the extraordinary choice in life and how far do we push ourselves? A question I think that's very pertinent in our lives today. How far do we go to be extraordinary, and what does that mean? And I know as a mom in my 40s with 2 kids, that question had a really big resonance for me. You know, I'm a working mother, and I push myself in my career, and I love it, and I do feel like the theater is my shrine and my ritual and what I've given everything in my life. And yet, you know, what about the simple life, you know? And what about, you know, what we call in Pippin, you know, the ordinary life? And what I love about this musical is it's not moralistic. It doesn't say, well, that's the choice, that's the best choice. And I've seen audiences at this production over the performances at ART and on Broadway over the last few years. And I see young college kids, you know, with their eyes wide open, tears pouring down their face. And I think, oh my God, they're thinking about what is life and what am I going to do and how do I have meaning and what do I do that's important and how am I going to matter?
You don't stop thinking that when you're in college.
You don't. And you know, I've seen audience members in their 80s with tears pouring down their face, and I think this musical is resonating either because you're on your journey, you're reflecting on your journey, you're thinking about, in our metaphor, did I ever want to run away with the circus? Why didn't I? Gosh, I did, and what did I give up? So, you know, and that's life. That's why I think it's not moralistic. Life is about the living, and if you can be present in the life and learn to listen to yourself, that is what it means to be alive. And I think this show takes you through that.
Just the basic source material clearly did that for you because you saw it when you were a young girl.
Yeah.
And always wanted to revisit it somehow.
Yeah.
Now, when you decided, this is what my next project is going to be, we're going to do this at ART and we might get to bring it to Broadway. What was that moment? What triggered that to say this was the time to take that chance to recreate Pippin?
I had just done Hair and done that big revival, and I felt in my bones like I am addicted to this, like making musicals, this is all I want to do. And of course I went to what would be the next musical I'd want to do, and I didn't have to think a second. It was Pippin. Pippin was the show that I, as a little girl, saw, that I've grown up with, that I've sung all the songs. You know, I didn't have to open
Even
up
out
the
of
script.
context, we know the songs.
Oh my God, so out of context that I sang With You at my brother's wedding, not knowing that that song is actually Pippin saying, I can be with you, or with you, or with you. And of course, there I was singing with my sister, the harpist, you know, With You, dedicating it to my brother and his wife, his now wife.
I love that.
You know, that's how much I didn't know the context of the songs. It was in a sense, like an intuitive sense, that this was a show that I knew in my heart and in my bones, like I knew I wanted to bring it back. It had not been brought back to Broadway in 40 years. And then when I actually took that intuitive suggestion seriously and looked at the script and started studying it, then I got really hooked because of the meaning of the show. And
so it wasn't how do I do this? It was, let's dig in.
You know, it was, I want to do the show, but I did not really say, okay, I'm ready, until I got the circus idea under my belt. Because I knew you can't do a revival of Pippin without an idea of what you're doing and who those players are.
Because otherwise it's just a reconstruction.
Then it's just a reconstruction. And I had met Gypsy Snyder of Cette Droite de la Main, and I had been a big fan of her work, this kind of human-based, acrobatic, passionate, in the trenches kind of acrobatics. And I thought, that has to be on Broadway. I'm like, why don't we have that work that's so thrilling and real and emotional, you know, emotion-based and human-based? Why isn't that part of our vocabulary on Broadway? And then I met Chet Walker, who had been part of the original Pippin and had worked so closely over the years with Mr. Fosse. And when he said to me, you know, Mr. Fosse loved the circus. and it's sort of in the DNA of Pippin. He just didn't go there. But like, it's there. Look at the artwork from the original album cover.
Yep,
look at the original choreography. The Commedia dell'arte, and they're kind of in circus clothes, and they're pantomiming, juggling circus balls. And, you know, Mr. Fosse would never have wanted to repeat himself. And when he said that to me, and I thought, oh my God, there's something in the circus about the extraordinary.
Yeah.
That how far will you push yourself physically? And that metaphor we can make actually literal in this production. And Join Us could be the carnival circus barker outside of a tent saying, you want to come in? Come on in. It all started to like unravel, like what you know, the ideas started to flow. And of course, long hard work and, you know, 25 versions of magic to do. I mean, it seems all so simple now, but I mean, endless going at it.
It's supposed to seem simple now.
It's supposed to be simple now, but you know, hard work at like chipping away at what this concept could be and how to put it together.
It would be easy to focus on the idea, and much has been made of the idea of changing the gender of the leading player.
Yeah.
But I think it was just a perfect stroke. What I want to know, if we're going to talk about gender at all, is what does it mean to be a woman director doing this kind of work, both at ART and on Broadway and in the American theater at this moment? What does that mean, if anything?
I think it means women can be leaders and can run big budget musicals and can actually facilitate in beautiful ways intense collaboration and community building, which is what it takes to make great theater.
Yeah.
That is the art of theater, is how you pull disparate people together and get everyone climbing, you know, that mountain and getting to the top when you don't want to go back. When everyone wants to go back, and you got to like keep everyone going up the mountain. And the role of the director, to me, is to be a facilitator.
Yeah.
You know, everyone, it sort of shocks me when people say, oh, you have such a great vision. You know, I was like, well, I never really think of myself as a person with vision. I mean, I have passion and ideas, and that's why I love the theater. I love to learn. But my role as a director is to bring people together and make everyone, whether it's an actor or a choreographer or a lighting designer or a set designer, the best they can be. Like the most intense coach, you know, like how can I make people better than they ever thought they can be, better than I thought I could be, and that is my role. And I think I've had great mentors in my life, and I've been to, you know, great places like an all-girls school that taught me use your brain, your heart, your mind, work hard, and you can be and do anything you want to be.
Well, it's not that men directors can't do those things, but I think it's important that not only young women see a successful artistic endeavor from a woman like you, but I think it's important for young men to see it too. And I'm so delighted that you're bringing this work on the road so that more and more people not just see this great story and the wonderful collaboration you built, but the example of a strong woman being a leader in the theater. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
Now special moments with the cast members, and you can find the full interviews on our webpage. We begin with the amazing Lucie Arnaz.
When I'm called early every day, because the acrobatic call is the first call of the morning. The acrobats have to be called at a certain hour. And
because
my name is listed under acrobats, and I just get such a hoot. I said, this is incredible. Yeah, because I'm studying the trapeze.
Your mother would get a kick out of that.
She would be frickin' terrified. She'd be screaming at me, so what are you kidding?
She'd rather do it than have you do it.
No. She would never do it, and she would never let me do it. I wasn't allowed to wear tennis shoes without socks. Do you understand what I'm saying? The woman took no risks in that respect. She would never hang from a trapeze without a net and something to hold her on.
And now the actor who created the role of Pippin in the original production, who now plays King Charlemagne, John Rubinstein.
When was the last time you visited us in Colorado?
I was in Denver, I think, the year before last, doing the short story reading program that takes place here in town. I've done it twice.
Stories on Stage.
Stories on Stage. I've done it twice, and the last time was the year before last.
There's something really special about this particular visit to Colorado, not just because you're launching a national tour here, but you're launching a national tour of a show that you originated.
That's right.
What does that feel like?
It feels wonderful. It is nothing I ever would have expected. And to get to be in this show again, it's like revisiting dear, dear old friends that you haven't seen for decades. And they're all still there. They're all changed, but they're still there. And you can revisit them and live with them and laugh with them. And that's what it's like.
And now the charming actor who created the role of Pippin in the Broadway revival, Matthew James Thomas.
Well, this is kind of one of my favorite stories to date, actually, because my parents live in Malta, which is an island, well, I live in Gozo, which is an even smaller island next to Malta, which is just below Italy. And I'd finally gotten to see them because I hadn't seen them for a while and flown out there. So I was there for 4 days, and my phone rang with my feet in the pool, and it's the producers of the show, and they said, look, what are you doing? Could you come help us out? And I was like, yeah, of course.
How wonderful. How does that feel to have that flow through your body and through your voice again?
Great. And, you know, I'm getting used to the altitude. I've been told about the altitude, and I was like, nah, I'll be fine. But yeah, I feel it, especially, you know, having not done the show for a while.
There's a legend of the oxygen tanks backstage.
They're there.
They're there, that's right.
Yeah. We tried them. I tried them out. No, I didn't need them just yet, but
not yet.
Just in case.
And finally, the singer and actress you may remember from The Voice, Sasha Allen, who portrays the leading player.
What is it about this score that allows you to apply that kind of voice that we have come to admire?
Stephen Schwartz is incredible, right? So I don't really need to do much to his music to bring it to life. It's already brought to life, right? Yeah. Without me. But I guess I just get to bring my soul to it. Mm. Everybody has a different take on it, but what I love to do most is sing, and so it's the part that brings me the most joy. When I get out there and I sing Glory, it brings me joy.
Is that your favorite one right now?
Right now, that's my favorite part. But then at the end, there's some other like really amazing small parts that I have, and there's music that like touches your soul, and then it just makes you, you know. I hope that people enjoy it because I am completely enjoying it.
The Pippin National Tour premiere plays through September 20th. Details online at denvercenter.org. And the rest of our cast and creative team interviews are on our webpage, infocustv.org.
Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Good night.